Hey guys, I'm out walking with the Word again. Thank you for joining me. Today I want to follow up on a question that a friend asked me, and I said that I'd do a video on it. And he was saying, what can we learn from being socially distant and isolated? Because it just seems so contrary to God's will when God talks about us being together and being close and not forsaking gathering together. Yet at the moment we can't. We're all socially isolated, and that's a responsible thing to do. And what lessons can we learn in a season like this? And this got us thinking about the Apostle Paul. Paul was a socially distant apostle. He was a church leader. He was engaged with churches. He was discipling them. He was ministering to them. He was leading them, but he was doing it from a distance because he was so passionate about telling other people about Jesus, telling other people about his faith. He'd plant a church and he'd disappear off to plant new churches, but at the same time he'd have relationships with people that he cared about in those churches, and Paul would really want to invest in those relationships, so he'd do it by writing letters. And in fact, those letters make up the New Testament that we read. So when you read the New Testament, you're often reading letters written by Paul to churches to encourage them. And I love this because there's things that we can learn from Paul in the way that he talks to and relates to people where he's not around them, but he has meaningful relationships. And I think that's something that we as Christians, that is, if you are a Christian watching this, something that we as Christians can learn. In fact, even if you're not a Christian, I think there are lessons to take from this amazing church leader. So I want to look at three things that Paul does in his letters. So Paul, he relates to people, he builds relationship. There's my little boy in the background. How cute is he? So he relates to people, he builds relationship, he educates people, and he motivates them. So relating, educating, and motivating. And I think we can bring these three things into our own relationships as well with each other as a church, as Christians, where we spur each other on, build each other up, keep it real, keep accountable, and keep vulnerable. And I want to talk through each of these things in order, just to give you some examples from Paul's letters, because he does it so well. So how does Paul relate to people? Well, he greets people at the beginning of his letters. He's compassionate, he's loving, he talks about how he prays for people, he weeps with people, he's a really compassionate church leader. I'm going to give you a few little examples that just jump out to me that I absolutely love. So in Romans 16:19, Paul talks about how he hears of the church's obedience and he rejoices with them and for them. Another example would be in Philippians 1 verse 8, where Paul says, God is my witness how I long for you with the affection of Christ. And that is incredible. You think about how much Christ loves us. He died for us and he loves us so much. And Paul says, I long for you with that same affection. And this is not face to face. This is in the letter. He's distant from them, yet he's showing that depth of love to them. Or a third one, I love this one too. So in Colossians 2 verse 5, Paul says, although I'm not with you physically, I'll be present with you in spirit. And I love this idea. Now, I don't know if this is literal, whether Paul's been kind of gifted by God with a special grace to be literally present in spirit somewhere else, or whether Paul is just saying, I'm inclined towards you, I'm thinking of you, you're on my heart, I'm there spiritually with you. But either way, it's this sense of Paul saying, I'm so engaged with you, even though we're not present physically, I'm present with you in my spirit. The deepest part of me is with you. So it really is possible to have the love and the depth of the relationships, even though we're distant, because Paul models that. Secondly, he educates people. Now, pretty much any book you turn to that was written by Paul, any of those letters will be packed with doctrine and education, whether he's expounding the Jewish law, whether he's talking to people about atonement, whether he's talking to people about food laws. Paul is a natural teacher. He loves educating people, but he can only educate people because he's constantly learning himself. And again, that's something we can learn in this time. We can learn to learn. We can learn to take time out to read, to study, to go deeper in the Word, to go deeper in our faith, pick up some books that you wouldn't read and educate yourself. And as you educate yourself, you'll become more able to educate other people and bring new ideas to them. I'm just going to scooch into the side here because we're socially distancing. There's someone coming by. This idea of Paul being someone who just keeps educating, he keeps sharing his ideas, and then his education leads into motivation, and I think that's the model of good education. The ideas that he's teaching people aren't just ideas that sit in the head, they're ideas that move to the heart, and they're ideas that inspire action. change, they're ideas that challenge and move us to something. And so much of Paul's letters are motivating people, whether it's telling people to set their minds on God, to meditate on God, to move deeper into their relationship with God. Another way that I love how Paul motivates people is he uses himself as an example. He says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. He wants people to follow Christ with the same conviction and passion and purpose that he does. He encourages people to imitate him as he imitates Christ. And it's not saying that he always imitates Christ. There'll probably be areas where Paul was letting himself and God down, and it's not telling people to imitate that, but it's saying imitate me as I imitate Christ. And then often you see him outlining his own attitudes towards God. So for example, when Paul says, whatever I consider gain, I count it as loss for the sake of knowing Christ, or I consider these present sufferings nothing compared to the glory. It's talking about his own attitudes. But why? Because he's modelling something to people. He's saying, I have this attitude towards God. I think what Paul's essentially saying is, this is a good attitude. Have these attitudes in yourself too. He's using his best attitudes, not to get glory for himself or to get to big himself up. He's using those good attitudes as an example and a model to people. And don't feel afraid to do that. I think sometimes in our culture we can...
Papa.
What happened? Yeah, Papa, you found me. He's found Papa. Papa had gone missing, wandering away with a camera. I love my family so much. These guys are incredible. Look at that. There you go, he found me. And we've found you too. Mwah. Yeah, so I actually can't remember where I was now, but I'm really grateful because that was a really sweet distraction. Yeah, so Paul, he is someone who he brings passion to people, and he models it, and then he encourages people not to big himself up, but to I'm just gonna have to move over again, we've got some people coming. Yeah, he doesn't do it to big himself up or get glory for himself. He does it to model good attitudes, to model a good relationship with God. So we've got three things, and we can bring these into our relationships with each other intentionally and purposefully, and I think this is something we can learn. So oh, I'm filming for Walking with the Word. We're on YouTube, and definitely check it out. It's a spiritual reflection vlog. Walking with the Word, yeah. There you go, just sharing Walking with the Word with people, bigging up my... should be a bit shameful, bigging up my channel as I go, but they did ask, so... No, I love this. Actually, you do sometimes find, as when you're walking along and sharing the Word like this, people stop and look, and... yeah, I think it's going to open some really interesting opportunities. So keep walking on this journey with me, and we'll see what fun we can have. Anyway, I wanted to say, so you've got these three things. You've got relationship, education, and motivation. We can bring these things into our relationships with each other, even when we're distant from each other. And in fact, we don't have to wait for Royal Mail. We don't just have to write these letters and stick them in the post. We can still we can still look at people's faces. We can still look at their facial expressions. We can talk to them through video media. We can get onto Zoom, all those types of things, and have these great relationships. But I do want to talk about some risks and some things that could be temptations or distractions. So the first one would be keeping it only on a surface level. So surface level, trivial, phatic communication about, I don't know, about the weather or whatever, whatever you just want to talk about casually, is a good thing. It gives you time to unwind, connect. I'm not criticising that in itself, but sometimes we can only do that and we don't get deeper. And I want to encourage us and challenge us to get deeper, go real, get vulnerable with people, let people know how you're doing, be honest about your fears, your hopes, your dreams, and use it as an opportunity to open up. So that's the first risk, is only keeping it surface level. Try to go deeper, try to be intentional in getting deeper and more personal with people. The second thing to focus on, the second thing to be careful of is gossip. And the reason I mention this is sometimes when we're feeling a bit scared, a bit insecure, we're missing connection with people, we can choose non-optimal ways of connecting with people. So for example, gossiping, judging, being negative about people. And I think the challenge is to avoid doing that. The challenge is to keep it positive, keep it real, keep it vulnerable. And the third thing to be careful of in this time is apathy, because so many people do have so much time and so much space, and boredom can take over. I think sometimes we can just get apathetic, we can lose steam. And again, Paul is just such a good model of constant compassion and passion and zeal. He's just such an enthusiastic character. So make sure you surround yourself with people who are enthusiastic and inspire you to go deeper, to move further, to learn more, to better yourself, and not kind of become apathetic in this season. So I want to really thank my friend for asking this question. It's got me thinking too. It's got me pondering over what I can learn personally. And you know, I was thinking that Paul is just such a good example of someone who does teach us a lot to learn, as someone who nurtured the church and built the church from a distance. So as we do church and as we build relationships from a distance with each other, there's some really valuable things to learn from how Paul does that. So thank you for joining me. I'm going to be releasing these videos every morning, so you can come and journey with me on my walk with the Word, and bring your walk with the Word along with me, and talk to me. Let me know how you're doing. Drop comments in the comment section, or if you're connected with me on Facebook, drop me questions on Facebook if there's anything you want me to explore. And take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye for now.